Welcome to The Real Heal, a show featuring real, raw, and authentic conversations between experts in the holistic health space. This is your chance to be a fly on the wall, listening to a 100% organic, unscripted chat about topics in the holistic health world that most aren't even talking about. And believe me, we are holding nothing back. I am your host, Dr. Renee Wallenstein, also known as the Libidoologist, double board certified doc, entrepreneur, as well as healthcare disruptor. I have navigated the traditional world of medicine and overcoming my own personal health obstacles, and I had to take matters into my own hands when the system was failing me. Now, I'm shaking things up and sharing my message while collaborating with other experts in my holistic health community to bring you answers to your burning questions about not only getting well naturally, but sustaining that newfound good health. Each week, I will bring you an expert guest, and we will address not only the physical components of optimal health, but also the mental and spiritual influences that will set you up for a long life of limitless energy, self-confidence, and joy so you can get the real heal for good. So if you're ready, let's get into it. Jill, I am so excited to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thank you. So excited to be here.
And I have to say, we're breaking the mold in 2023 in this podcast and having a lot of different guests on with different expertise, not necessarily in the health world. However, I feel like a lot of my guests, even though they're outside the health world, what they're an expert in, their expertise actually contributes to your overall well-being and general health.
Yeah.
And so for you in particular, you're a high performance coach. And when I saw that, I was like, oh my gosh, my audience are a bunch of like kick-ass women, high achieving, trying to do it all. I need to have you on because we need to talk about how they can do it all, but stay sane and take care of themselves all.
Yeah.
And I think, I believe we can have it all. We just have to know some little tips and tricks. So that's what I hope you're going to help us with. But before we get into it, tell us who you are, how you got doing what you're doing. All of it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. So I got into coaching with my own testimony, as most coaches do. We finding ourselves in a certain place, situation, and then we think, okay, how did I get here? And how can I now use my battles, the things that I went through? So I'll back up. As a young girl, I've always been, pretty intuitive, followed my heart, kind of did the things that I wanted to do. As a child, we used to go on vacation in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. I loved it. And I always said to my family, I'm like, I will be moving to the Carolinas when I'm here. And so my background, I was an event manager did weddings in South Carolina. I was in project management, very like high achieving, always, go type of girl. But everything, I say that South Carolina story because everything that I said that I would do, I pretty much did. I just followed what brought me joy. What is the next best thing? I trusted that intuition, like my heart, versus really getting too much in my head and thinking about it. I just was like, does this bring me joy? Yes, it does. I'm going to go do it. And that led me so far in life. And I really created the milestones that I wanted. I was achieving the things that I wanted. And then I got to this like point in my life around the age of 30, and I was doing really well in my career. I had left. We were in South Carolina. I met my husband there and we loved it. We were living that island life, but something on my heart says, if you're going to start having a family, of course, always brings us back closer to home. So I grew up in Ohio. I live in Indianapolis, Indiana now. And so found myself back in the Midwest with my husband, having kids, and just got to that point where I was around 30, where I was like, is this it? Is this what life is? And just kind of started to spiral out there. And then I can talk a little bit more about that story, but that's kind of what led me, my whole battles and where I got to is really kind of that past point of where I got to the 30s and said, what's going on? Yeah. So, and I can go there and I can talk about kind of what happened in that situation of my life or.
Yeah. Go for it. Just keep telling us.
All right. So I got to that point, and I think many women do as we get to this point. And at that around 30 years old, I became a mom.
Mm-hmm.
And I was growing successfully in my career, and I was achieving the things and just getting promoted. And I was like, wow, I'm pretty good at this. Pretty good at project management and event management. And, but yet I was feeling really stressed out. The job continued to just consume me. And I found myself, okay, well, this is as far as you can go. This is where you're at. You're a wife, you're a mom, you're doing pretty good in your career, but this is really as high as you can go. Yeah. And that little thought really took a whole spiral on me of thinking of being just kind of stuck. And I said I was really intuitive before, and I had kind of lost that. I stopped believing in what my heart desired. I started to kind of mute my voice, pull back from the things that I thought, okay, that was just Jill having fun. That was just, my life back then. And I reached that point where I started to think, okay, this is it. And I found myself just completely burned out. The pressure of the work continued to consume me. So as you said, I'm a high performance coach now. I'm a high achiever. I'm an Enneagram 3 for the people that can relate. They are achievers, like performance equals success. And I think that's where my mind took me, was that if I'm performing, if I'm busy, then I'm successful. And so my self-worth just really got all caught up in the title, in the success, in the amount that was on my paycheck. And because of that, I just kind of lost all my values. And I just kept trying to get for more and more. And I think so many women maybe can relate that we just get ourselves on this hamster wheel, especially if you're a high achiever. You get yourself on this hamster wheel of busy work and burnout, and you slowly just start to deteriorate without even realizing what's going on. And so in that moment, it was just, what do I do really good at? Well, I do really good at my job. And that's kind of makes me feel good. So I'll just put all my focus on my job. And then by doing that, it just led to that burnout. And I wasn't dealing with the feelings that I was having, some things that were going on back home. I was putting all my focus into my work. So my poor children, my husband weren't getting any attention. And then if there was things going on at home, I just wanted to bury it in the work. We use these distractions to numb some of the pain, the feelings. We just bury it with more. So I found myself in that state where I was just working more. And then when I would get home, I really didn't want to deal with the conversations or maybe some of the things that was going on in my marriage. So I would just turn to wine, have a glass of wine. That glass of wine would turn into 2. Well, then it started turning into a bottle of wine a night. And I'm a person who, I'm pretty energetic, I'm pretty positive. And so a morning routine and getting my exercise in first thing in the morning, that's always been a great thing for me. And I try to get all my clients to do that, because how you start your day, your intention is so, so, so important. And so, but when you're stressed out and you're working all the time and you're staying up till midnight trying to get the deadlines done, and then you're drinking wine, you're not going to get up and work out. So that pattern, those habits just continued to consume every ounce of me, to the point that I literally stood in the mirror one day and I thought, who is this woman? Where is that fun, positive spirit? When is the last time that I've been with my friends? I would cancel plans all the time. And so I just started doing this attachment to my career. High achieving, being busy means I'm successful. And it's just complete bullshit. And I finally, I talk about this in my book that I just released, but I hit what I call my personal rock bottom. Everybody has their own rock bottom story, but this was my rock bottom moment where my marriage was crumbling. I actually stepped out on my marriage. I had an affair because, well, when you're at the office and you're working on a $4 million project, it's easy to get consumed by somebody who is giving you attention and feeling loved. But my husband loved me so much, but yet the blinders were on. The noise was too loud. And that's what happens when we get in that cycle of that busy work. We just start to lose our values. We start to get blinded by things, distractions, and we can just find ourselves really in a pit. And so at that moment, I was like, something's got to give.
Mm-hmm.
I've got to change.
Mm-hmm.
And so at that moment, it took it took a while, the habits and things take time, but I started to make some shifts, make some intentional things. And that's kind of what led me into my coaching business. And so there's a lot of things that I just said there, but we'll recap it all, because there's some really key things that I think people want to know, as far as how do you get stuck? Like, what are those barriers? And then what are the 3 things, that I found that can really get us through it?
I love that. And we're going to definitely get into that. I just want to sort of highlight a few things in your story that speaks so much to myself and my audience, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And I know that because a lot of them are my former clients, current clients, all the things, you say stuck. And I see that a lot in the women I work with. Yes, I work from the health perspective, but we have to go a lot deeper when we're talking about overall health and wellness and well-being. And I find, women, when they come to me, they want the strategy of the diet, and they want the, all the lifestyle changes, but like, we got to go a little bit deeper. Like, are you happy at work? And a lot of women are feeling stuck in life, in work, kind of like you, like, is this it? And, they've reached a ceiling as far as their work goes, but they're told, what else are you going to do? You're already 30, 40, 50. And, I feel like, so they're stuck in their life, their situation, their job, which are not finding purposeful. They're finding that it's really hard to get out of bed in the morning because their meaning is tied to the work that has a cap, and they're just not fulfilled at their job. And it's like you said, it's a paycheck, and maybe it's a good paycheck and it's paying the bills. And so, they, it's a spiral downward that they're feeling, and then ultimately it trickles into their health, because like you said, they're stressed. They're giving their all to their family when they're there, as much as they can, right? Or not.
Right.
And they're not, or they are, like, they're stressed from that. And then they're turning to food, alcohol, generally are the 2 places my community turns to give them that nice little dopamine hit, that the stress relief that we all feel from a nice glass of wine or a box of cookies. And like you said, they wake up the next morning, maybe they're hitting the snooze button because they're exhausted. And dual exhausted, like they're exhausted because they stayed up late, they drank the wine, they ate all the sweets, and now there's no reason for them to get out of bed, because they're like, oh, like, why, like, I'm just going to go back into this job that I really don't like. And maybe there's other contributing factors at work, of like a boss that they don't care for, or coworkers that, that they're just not in alignment with, as far as even their goals, like, it's hard when I work with women with health goals, and they go into environments that are not supportive to those goals, whether it be at work, their friend circle, their home life. And it's this vicious cycle that I find that they're in. And then I ask them, like, what do you love to do? And they're like, I don't even know anymore.
No.
They've lost all love of life, all zest. And so
absolutely.
With that being said, again, your story aligns, and this is why you're here today, because what you do now and where you come from completely align with me, my audience, the mission of this podcast. And so why don't we get into it? Because I know, you do recognize that there's generally 4 barriers that are keeping women stuck. And you have 3 tips for us to get us unstuck. And to rise up. So let's talk about that and see where that goes.
Yes. I so relate to what you said because I find that with my clients as well, is the question of, what do you love to do? What brings you joy? And it's like this weird silence where it gets to the point where they're like, I don't even know. And I kind of was like that. And it's like crazy, because one of my core values is actually fun. Like, I love to have fun, but I got to a point where I wasn't having any fun. And so I think the 4 barriers is really that it's the people pleasing. I'm a high achiever. I love to be around people. My why in life is to contribute to the success of others. Like, if I know that I'm helping somebody, that like is a win for me. That fuels my like soul. And so in my corporate job, the fact that, I was having back in most of my career after the weddings was in project management and trade shows. And so we would build these huge, massive trade show displays and just to see the client's reaction and like celebrate those wins and like know that I've helped, like, look at us, like, look at me and this whole team that put this together. Like that was so important. But as the burnout began, it was just another project. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think for most women, it's this feeling of we have to be contributors. We have to be people pleasing. We have to feel that we have to help others, but yeah, we're not helping ourselves at all. So we give and give and give and give to the point that we're like, well, what about me? And I think that's why so many people get to that question and they're like, I don't even know, because I haven't even given me any space, any time. So people pleasing is for sure one of the barriers why women just stay on that busy hamster wheel. Being a yes girl, that is me. Overcommitting because of that people pleasing, because I want to be a contributor. I'm easily persuaded to just say yes without thinking. Not now, but back then it was almost like, Jill, you know what? We're going to come to you, Jill, because we know you're reliable. Like if we give you this to you, we don't even have to worry about it. You're going to get it done. You're going to see it through. Would you mind just taking this on? And I'll be like, sure. Yeah, of course I will. Thanks. And then looking at my to-do list thinking, I don't even know how I'm going to get this done. And so that's where the midnight hours came through, the 1 a.m., like putting everybody else's priorities in front of my own priorities. And so no boundaries, boundaries is huge. So people pleasing, yes, girl. And then fear would be number 3. I think so many women live our lives in this state of fear, whether that's fear of the unknown. So in the situation of the burnout cycle, like I could sense it, it was like I call it a slow burn, but all of a sudden you're in the midst of the burn and you're like, this is not healthy. This state, I'm not healthy, right? I said, I looked in that mirror, like, but yet there's just still that paralyzed, like being paralyzed of fear of saying, but what else? That fear of the unknown. I don't even know what else I would do. My whole background has been in event management and project management. If I go to another place, it's probably going to be the same, just all these lies that we tell ourselves. So the fear of the unknown, fear of change, getting out of that comfort zone. And then for some people, it is, fear of success. Some people, they really want to change and they want to grow, but they're afraid that, if they just take this step, maybe they'll get too successful. And what will that do to their family? So there's all kinds of different variations of fear. And then the last stage is helplessness. And that's the stage where honestly, I don't want anyone to ever be in, because that is really just the state where you have accepted that this is the way it is. It is, I'm always been this way. Nothing's going to change. Or maybe my husband's always been this way. He's not going to change. My family has a history of this. It's just is the way it is. And you just have now put a label and told your mind, what you feed your mind is what your body thinks. I mean, that's how habits are formed, is the way that you think of yourselves and your situations. And so you just get to this state of helplessness. And then that is where you can change. I've been there. I was there. But man, it takes a lot of work to get out of that state of mind.
It feels like they ultimately, whether they had it all along, but these, coming down this path of these barriers, by the time they get to helplessness, they have this fixed mindset thinking, this is it. Like this, so-and-so hasn't gone any further. I'm married. This is as good as it gets. And there's no changing that. And because of, especially number 3, fear, like what if, and, we were talking before I hit record, even my own story, all the judgment out there after I had my injury and I was leaving my conventional career as an obstetrician gynecologist. People are like, the criticism is so great, you've gone all these years and given up your life for medicine and now you're just walking away. And it's, like a lot of times we're already rock bottom. Like I was at my rock bottom at that point, and I was like, it's not like I wanted to, it's I physically can't do this anymore. Now you're making me feel. And again, they can't make me feel anyway, but when you're in that vulnerable rock bottom state, it's so easy to listen to the outside noise and all the criticisms and judgment and turn it on yourself and saying like, what's wrong with me? Like, you're right. I can't do anything else. And, for the longest time, I was like, I don't know what to do. Like, I'm not fulfilled. I can't get out of bed in the morning. Like, it's the same story,
Yes.
And I think a lot of women are out there, that same stuck story of like, even they want to do something more, but there's that outside world of, maybe it's even financial,
Right.
right? Like they're
Oh,
making a comfortable
yes.
check, and now what? Like, what if they leave that? And,
Yeah.
um, that keeps them stuck in the unknown, and the change fear,
Mm-hmm.
that leads that helplessness of like, okay, this is as good as it gets. I'm just going to stay here for next, I don't know how many times I hear people counting down to retirement. And it's like, I'm never going to retire. Like, I love what I do now. So like,
Right.
why would I want to retire? I'm like, what's even the age? I don't even know. And like, I've been seeing a lot lately of like the average like lifespan of a woman and a man, 70, I don't know, 4 and 6. And like, we
Yeah.
retire at 65, and it's like, what's left, And I'm like,
Right.
wow. Like, if that doesn't hit home, I don't know what does.
I had the same vision. I was like, why wait till 70 to go enjoy your life when you could be enjoying it every single day? I'm like, surely God did not put us on this planet to just go to work, come home, and have it be Groundhog's Day every day. And I was like, there was just this wake up call of fire inside of me of saying, I've got to help women understand this, that there is more to life. Like, we can love what you do, like find meaning in your battles and your purpose. And so I think your story is really fascinating as well, because like you just said, I love what I do. Sometimes it's like these situations like with you where you got in this, where you couldn't physically do that job anymore. But honestly, you may, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but might look back now and say, you know what, that was actually a blessing in disguise. Like, I love what I'm doing. I couldn't imagine doing it, still being in that, corporate world,
Yeah,
or yours,
absolutely.
the
I
health
mean,
industry.
yeah, I
Yeah.
would still be delivering the babies, but I would be counting down to retirement because it was
Yeah.
so stressful. Like, it was fulfilling, but the stress level, like once I stepped out of it, I literally look back and I'm like, wow, like it was 24/7 stress, and my lifespan would have been a lot shorter probably than 74. And not only the stress, but like the lifestyle that goes along with that to cope with the stress. And,
Yeah.
I see it all around me, except for, I don't see it as much in the docs that have left the conventional world and come to the functional medicine side, which is where I'm at. And because we take pride in our health
Yeah.
and feeling good and self-care, and we really try to practice what we preach. And so,
Mm-hmm.
which I don't see a majority of conventional docs doing that. And again, I can understand, it's no judgment. It's just, that's
Yeah.
how you cope with that lifestyle. So
Absolutely.
how do we get unstuck? Like, we have our
Yeah.
barriers, like what can we do to get unstuck?
Yeah. So I think there's three, as I look back in my journey and the things that I decided to be intentional about, I think there's some really key things that people should pay attention to. From one, I think, especially for women, those are who I coach and specialize in. Um, we have to start reclaiming our power, and we have to start speaking our truth and being vocal on the things that we know need to change, want to change. Like, my number one strength, like on Gallup Strength Finder and all the tests, right? My number one strength is communication. Like, I knew as a little girl, I wanted to be a motivational speaker. I wanted to be on stages. I had no idea what I would be talking about, but I got in trouble all the time at school for talking. Like, love to talk. No reason, like, why I have a podcast now. And so I was great at communicating with people, with my work, my projects. But yet, when it came to me personally and the things that I wanted, the things that I desired, communicating, with my husband, like, all of a sudden it was just like I would just close up.
Yeah.
And so I think that step one is you have to like unmute your voice. Like, you have a voice to be used. Set those boundaries, be intentional with them, communicate the boundaries, and just voice your concerns. Like, especially if you are in a corporate job where you are feeling the pressure of like the burnout, the capacity, and if you're a yes girl like me and people pleaser, like, as somebody comes and says, hey, would you mind just taking this on? I know you're busy, but it'll only take about 10 minutes. Well, it usually does not take 10 minutes. Be honest with yourself and say, you know what, I would love to help you, but I have this, and this. So I can do that for you, but it will not get done until this. Is that going to be okay for you? And really Communicate that versus just saying yes and then penalizing yourself and being up till 1 a.m. You have to start communicating those. So I would think that would be number one. And then number two is, to tie with that, is being authentically you. Showing up as authentically you. It is so exhausting to hide behind a smile, to hide behind somebody that you're not. I did that for so long, where I talked at the beginning of how, I was a pretty intuitive, free spirit, girl, like really trusted my gut. But yet I got to a point where I just started being like, oh, well, I think society thinks we should act like this. If you're going to be in this position, you should be like this, or you should do this, or you should wear this. And I just started changing my ways slowly. It's again, it's not like a flip of a switch. It's these things that gradually we start to do.
Yep.
And we don't even recognize it. And we just start maybe even being with people that aren't really like us, but yet we just kind of feel like, oh, well, I would look better if I hung with this crowd versus this. But when you're with those crowd, you're like, I don't even feel like myself here, but I'm going to put on the face. And that is exhausting. Like, it is so exhausting. So I always recommend, get back to your roots, get back to your why, what matters most to you. And are you living true to that? Are you being the woman that you were born to be, the values that you had as a young girl? I love to do these exercises of like really getting back in touch with that young self, because she's still there. She is still inside of you, like ready to burst out. Like the things that you love to do at 9 is probably still the things that you love to do now. And like we were saying, like so many women don't even know what they are. I'm like, what did you do? So I always like to ask, like, what did you love to do at 9? Okay, well, I love to, go out on the lake, or I love to go boating, or I love to go color. I'm like, when's the last time you grabbed a coloring book and colored? And they're like, what? I'm like, 45. Coloring? I'm like, do it and see how much joy it brings. I mean, you just have to stay like true to yourself. And I think as I coach high performing women, leaders, and I always say the number one quality that a leader can have is they are inwardly sound. I mean, they are so inwardly sound. They're secure, they're confident, they're self-aware. They're able to like read the room and know how their gifts affect others and use that. And so I'm like, if you want to influence yourself as a leader, as an individual, you got to go back to the core. You have to start with yourself and start showing up authentically you. So not only are you going to get out of the burnout stages of that, but you're also going to start being noticed. You're going to grow, because people are going to be like, wow, she is so real and honest and authentic. So that's like the one thing I feel like throughout my whole life, I've always been pretty authentic and open, but there was a stage in my life where I just hid from that. And when I finally unleashed that and I started showing up, like people couldn't understand it. I did a 100% leap of faith. When I decided I'm done with this corporate world, I took a leap of faith and I said, I know I'm being called into this coaching business. I know that I need to start speaking my truth, reclaiming my power, helping other women do the same. And Renee, you wouldn't believe some of the looks, but I had to hold true to like my knowing and my calling and not let fear, because others are like, you're going to speak openly on stages. You're going to speak openly on social media and say that you had an affair and you're just going to basically tell your dirty laundry. And I was like, yes, that is exactly what I'm going to do. Because there are so many women that are hurting and they're lost and they're broken. If I heard a podcast where somebody was sharing this, I could say, oh my gosh, you too. Like, I'm not alone, because there were so many days where I felt so alone and shameful and guilty and remorseful, but I had nowhere to go. And so I just kept holding it all in. And that is just terrible. So I would say unmute the voice, show up as your authentic self. And then number 3 is to start being open to change. I always hear the word, people always say, oh, we hate change. We hate change. And I'm like, you know what? I don't know. Women love to change their hair. Women love to get a new purse. We love to change our shoes. I don't know if it's so much that we don't like change. I think it's just the fear of being true of what we need to change. And I found that in my story, where when I was really taking that season of looking at everything, really, I took a whole year to just get back in touch with the girl, Jill, again. Like, what happened? And really, that's where my abundant achiever lifestyle, my coaching program, and all that developed. Was I started to realize some things that we as women do. And the one thing that I did in this situation was I pointed the fingers of everybody else. So it was my boss's fault that I was unhappy, my coworkers, that I couldn't hire more people because of, after COVID. My husband, it was because, of his problems, all these things, like pointing outward. And then I thought, there's a common denominator here too. What about you, Jill? What are some things that you've been taking on? And so really getting clear of what are some things that you might need to change, and asking yourself those things, because like we said before, the habits really do affect the way that we think about ourselves, the way that we run our day. And so take a look at your routine. Like, how are you waking up? Are you rolling over and are you grabbing your phone? Are you checking the meetings? Are you checking all the emails? And are you just literally starting your day with this anxiety feeling? Because that's exactly how I started my day every day. And like I said, I wasn't working out anymore. I wasn't feeling energized. I was just like, another day.
Yep.
And so maybe take a look at that. And the thing that I realized that was so profound was when we get back to the topic of like helping others and giving to others. Like, I finally realized, like, I have 2 kids, young kids, 10 and 7. I need some quiet time. And so my three things on change is change up that routine. And then I say no snooze, no phone, and then fill up your cup first. So I started to be really intentional about setting my alarm clock 30 minutes before the rest of the house got up. And that was my time to have my coffee preset, brewing for me, taking a journal, getting my thoughts down to paper, or listening to a good inspirational podcast that would just set my mood for the day, or getting into scripture or worship music, something for that 30 minutes that was for me, that was not, it was not going to be uninterrupted. It was not going to, have my kids climbing on me and spilling my coffee, like just a moment of stillness. And that was a game changer, because in that moment, I was able to fill my cup up. I was able to have that time to really reflect. And then that's when I started really journaling about, where has my life gone? What are some things that need to change? And just that 30 minutes was a game changer. So I think look at your routine and be open to change, or maybe look at the opportunities that are in front of you, and like really look at that and say, okay, are you not taking these opportunities because of fear? Or, look at it from a perspective. Or maybe if you're stuck in the battle, like, both me and you had different battles, but we were in that moment, I think we both looked at it from a different lens of saying, okay, why is this happening for me and not to me? What can I use in this battle, this hurt, this pain right now? Like, why is it happening for me? And what can I really do to get out of it, or use it to help somebody else? So those are kind of my 3 things that I think was a game changer for me.
I love that. And it's interesting when you say, speak your truth. I also have my Gallup strengths, and I'm number 1, an achiever, and number 3, a learner. And it's so interesting because for years, of course, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today without those 2 strengths, right?
Yeah.
And I have all top 5 are just all things that contribute to what I do today. But I was criticized for years I was called a machine. I was called like, do you ever stop learning things? And, I said, gosh, no, like my motto is like, I'll never live long enough to learn everything I want to learn.
Oh yeah.
There's just so much to learn out there. And I take it all in, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, how can I apply this to myself, my family, my clients? And just like social media, like I treat social media like you're all my I work with all of you, like let's change
Yes.
lives. Right. And
Yes.
so, for so long though, I try to mute that because I was criticized for it until I did my Gallup strengths. I just recently became a positive psychology certified coach and really
Awesome.
delved into the meaning of well-being and, obviously your strengths are one of them. And I found that when I stepped back from learning last year and trying not to achieve as much and
Mm-hmm.
it really, last year was probably one of the worst years since my injury in 2012 in my history of living. And I have to look like, what did I do differently? And I listened to the outside world
Yep.
criticizing me and I tried to play small and I'm like, what am I doing? Like, why don't, and then I obviously, I had the validation from that and my values assessment. And it's like, wow, like this is truly who I am. And,
Yeah.
speaking of authenticity, it was harder for me not to be true to myself. Like it took more energy for me to hold back than to just be
Mm-hmm.
me and be like, listen, this is who I am. If you don't like it, sorry, kind of,
Right. Yeah.
and take up space. Like I just was starting to get so small because of what everyone around me was saying. And
Yeah.
it's really hard when you're starting to feel like, oh, like it's just hard when you think you're on the correct path and you want to do something else. You want that change, like step 3, like start, open to
Yep.
change, want to change, but like you have so much noise in your head
Noise.
around you.
Yes.
And again, if we're like already stressed and overwhelmed and not feeling fulfilled, it's just so easy to get into this vicious cycle of like breaking out of that. You literally have to wake up one day and be like, I'm done. Like
Right.
I'm done. And I hope our conversation today helps those listening, like not to get as rock bottom as we did, because I had to get rock
Exactly.
bottom myself before I literally can picture myself crawling out of the depths of a ditch,
Yes.
and it was hard. And
Mm-hmm.
I would slip a little bit down and I would like a couple more steps up and then I would slip a little bit more. And it personally took me like a year and a half to get out of it.
Yeah.
And, everyone sees us today and they're like, oh my gosh. I'm like, no, 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 no. I was not on social media. You could not find me in that year and a half where I
No.
was just a recluse. I was in my house. Like I wasn't going out. I wasn't talking to anyone and I was just working on me. And
Mm-hmm.
I came out this beautiful butterfly a year and a
Yes.
half later, but like, that's what I
Yay.
needed to do. Like, I just needed to block out the
You do.
world and focus on me. And
Mm-hmm.
again, I hope we can get to those women out there that are starting to feel this and just give them the encouragement to like
Yeah.
not to wait and let it get even worse because it gets harder,
It does. It
and
really does.
I want our message to get to the women out there that are just starting to slip down that slippery slope and like before it gets too much harder to get to start reversing that. And like you said, start figuring out who you are, speaking your truth, reclaiming your power, taking up space, being
Yeah.
true to you. And like you said, change, and some of that change is gradual, really. Also, it's like, like
It
you
takes
said, yours,
time.
yours was a
It's
year, mine was a solid year and a half. It doesn't happen overnight. And I always say, like, you didn't get here overnight. It's going to take some time to get you back to where you want to be and then some.
right.
But just know every day, just wake up every day with those little celebrations of like, what is going in the direction that you
Yeah.
want to go in? And, it's,
Yeah. And celebrate the small victories, the
yeah,
small things over time. I always say the small things over time yield massive results. Like, and the same thing with your habits. Like, if you just stick to one thing, you say, okay,
yeah,
today, just even if you did this no snooze, I mean, you're being intentional that you are setting your intention for the day and like celebrate that. Like, I got up 30 minutes earlier. I took time for me. And I think the other thing, like me and you both did, is like that reflection time of
mhm,
like really figuring it out. And but I also want to make sure that people understand, like, as women, we are so reluctant to ask for help.
mhm,
And so as part of that, be open to change is like, there are people out there that are ready and willing to help you. I always say, like,
mhm,
hiring a coach or hiring, somebody that can get you out of things faster than you can get
mhm,
through yourself, because we
mhm,
all live in our mind sometimes, and
mhm.
we live in these limiting beliefs.
Yep.
But if you have somebody on the outside, that's what I help my clients with, is like, I'm not in your life, but I am out here and I have been through maybe certain things, and I can help you reach your goals faster, and I can
Yep.
help you get out of it quicker. And
Mhm.
so I would just want to make sure that they know, like, yes, the journaling and the self thing and taking time for you is important, but also don't underestimate the value of asking for that help too.
I agree. I absolutely
Yeah.
agree. And that's even in everyday life, like around the house, your spouse, your
Yeah.
partner, your friends, like everyone's there. And like, what
Oh my
I
gosh.
work with a lot of super women, and I'm a former superwoman who thought she could do it all and then some. And then I found
Yes.
myself in total burnout. So like, you have to get to the point where you can't do 10 things in a day. You can do 3 things well.
Yep.
And, you can't say yes to everyone. Just
Mm-hmm.
pick your priorities for the day, and the rest either has to wait or someone else has to do them. And just ask for help. People can't read your
Right.
mind, and if you look
Yes.
like you got it all under control, well, they're not going to say, can I help? But like, you have to be like, okay, like this is only sanely, like I like to get 10-minute walk in, right, for my own self-care outside in nature.
Yes.
So can you help me do this so I can actually have that 10 minutes? And
Oh, it's huge.
many people in your life will be like, of course, go, like I would love
Right.
to help. So
And I think be intentional with that. Like I started doing like time blocks on my calendar just for that. Like, especially when I was still at my corporate job, because I'm like, as a high achiever, we are so prone. It's just in my nature, like you, to just be I want to get the to-do list done. I got to go, 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 go. But to have that like mental break is so important. And what brings me joy is sunshine, water, fresh air. So just taking like, put it on your calendar, like right after lunch or during your lunch hour, like 10 minutes for you to go take a walk, get some air, get outside for a minute, and then regroup. You're actually more productive when you take the time. It really is true. So
I
yeah.
totally agree. Now, I work, there's a lot of women who listen to this or in my world that are looking, again, they've beaten themselves down so much. They're torn themselves. They don't know what they love anymore. They're just looking, a lot of them say, oh, like, how did you get so confident? Or like, they're looking for that confidence and that self-worth.
Yeah.
Where can they go? Like, what advice can you give them?
So honestly, you are fearlessly and wonderfully made. Like you are born, with a purpose, on a purpose. There is a mission for your life. And so don't get so wrapped up in your self-worth like I did. Your self-worth tied to your career, your title, the money you're making. Really take a deep look at who you are to the core, what you stand for. I mean, that was so opening for me. Is like, nobody thinks, we all know if we work for a corporate job, like my company stands for this, right? These are our core values at our company. This is our mission statement. But have you taken a chance to really look at what you live by? Your core values are your principles that you stand for, and they are what make your decision. And that was a huge reflection of why I was in the burnout. Was I was so far removed from my core values. So like my top 3 core values are connection, contribution, and fun. And so I was not contributing because, like I said, I was just like, it felt like just a project after project after project. We weren't celebrating the wins. I just didn't feel like I was making an impact or a difference. And then connection, like I love to be connected with a lot of people and love the energy. And it was just exhausting. It was just going in, getting the stuff done, coming home. So there's no connection, no relationship building, which I crave and I love. And then I was having no fun. I mean, it was literally go into work when it's dark, come home when it was dark. And so if you take a step back and you look at what are the core values that you stand for, you can pretty much see right then why you're in that burnout mentality and maybe why your self-worth why it's gotten so far off track. And then start just slowly take one and start, okay, fun is important to me. What can I do every single day that's going to bring me one ounce of fun? Like you are deserving of that. And then just honestly going back to just, you are awesomely made. Like you're amazing. Like you don't need any title or anything to prove it. You already are amazing. So that would be some advice. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. I hear so many women, I'm just a mom, or I'm just a this, I'm just a that. I'm like, you're more than that. Like, but
oh yeah,
we tie our value, like you said, to the title. And mine used to be, I'm just a doctor, but that was my whole worth. I am still a doctor, but like I was an obstetrician gynecologist. And like, if I'm not that, I'm nothing. And that's not true. And I've come to figure that out 10 years later, but
yes.
I just want to actually read, I trolled you before our interview, and like
Yeah.
your Instagram, and you were featured in a publication called Fresh, and you were asked, what do you regard as the lowest depth of misery? And I'm reading this because I think it resonates again with myself and my
Yeah.
audience. You said living in your mind, letting fear in your mind hold you back from doing the things your heart would love to do. And I think that's so powerful. And,
Yeah.
and again, I think it's easy for us to say, but we've both done it,
Mm-hmm.
and we're still, nothing bad happened. We're still
Right.
here to talk about it.
Right.
And honestly, there's some days I feel like I just have to close my eyes to just do it. I'm like, oh, this is so scary. I'm like, okay, let's just do it. And at the end of the day, I'm like, okay, I didn't die. Okay, that's good.
And I think we both know, like, speaking out on it and sharing it is contributing to others, and it's helping others. And so we have to go back to your why, and why why we decided to step out of that. But yes, living in our mind, I mean, that was so long. I let go of that intuition and that gut feeling. Like, if anybody has never or doesn't understand what I'm talking about with intuition, it's just that gut instinct. It's like, for me, I think everybody feels it a different way, but for me, it's like a really sense of like butterfly almost feeling in my stomach. I've heard some of my clients say they feel it like in their throat. It's just what it is to you, but it's just that true gut instinct of what's the best step forward. And so many of us, sometimes that intuition does not make sense. But really tune into that, because usually most of the time we feel something and we're like, oh, I want to do that. But our mind, it's like a battle between our heart to our mind. And so our mind says, oh, that's crazy. You want to do what? No, that's crazy. And then it's in a matter of like 5 seconds, you shut it down. You shut it down because of fear, all the things that we just talked about before. So really, if you live in your mind and you live it's basically a bunch of lies that it feeds you, and your brain really only knows what you feed it and what we see. But you can rewire that. You can slowly start to change your beliefs and the patterns. You can start listening to your intuition more, and just really questioning, am I acting out of fear, or is this something I really want to do? And then just trust that everything's always happening for you.
I love that. Yeah. It takes a great deal of awareness, which I think a lot of us, our present day, we're not living in the present and in the moment. We're ruminating about the past. We're worrying about the future. And I think the first step to even, is just like getting out of our head and getting into our body and our intuition is like be in the moment and feel what's going on and think of, just what all of a sudden you get this like ping of like, I get a hell yes, usually, or a hell no.
Right.
I'm like, oh, okay, we have to do this. And like, sometimes my kids are like, why, mom? I'm like, I don't know. We're just got to do it. Like, something's telling me. And a lot of times I won't know if I always follow my intuition. And if I don't, there's been a handful of times that I haven't. I'm like, see, that's why,
I know.
And when you find yourself saying over and over, something told me to, something that told you was that intuition that we just, and like you said, if we pause enough to think about it, our head's going to take over and talk us out of it.
Yeah.
And sometimes it doesn't make sense, but as long as it's not going to hurt anybody, go with it. And like, see where it goes. And the more we all have it, that intuition. The problem is like, I'm very scientific. I'm trained as a physician. Like, we are not trained to listen to our gut. We are trained black, white, like this or that.
Totally. Yeah.
Right. Like in our heads completely. So this is actually an art that I've had to fine tune over the past 8 to 10 years myself. And I have found that when I'm living too much in the future or the past, like I can't feel it. And so I just need to clearly get present and be like, okay, tomorrow's tomorrow. Let me just focus on the moment and today.
Yeah.
And a lot more comes to you in that time. And so I think and it really is, and I'm not perfect either. I still worry. I still ruminate. We all do.
It's natural. We're human.
Yeah. But I think just being aware of it and snapping out of it and saying, oh, look what I'm doing. Okay, let's just come back to now. And the more you do it, the easier it becomes. And the more you live in the now and not, again, passing.
And how freeing it is. Like that year that I was like very intentional about making some changes. That was my 2 words for that year was peace and presence, because I just felt like for so long I didn't have any of that. And I was like, I want to be present with my kids. I mean, I was present. Like I was always very intentional to like really try to, be home at dinner and do the things, as wives and moms do, but I was not present.
Yeah.
I mean, I was maybe sitting at the dinner table, but my mind was thinking about the next thing that I had, the next project, the next thing. Oh, as soon as I get these kids to bed, I got to jump back online, get all this done. And so
Yep.
if you can just let that go and just be in that moment, oh my gosh, it's just so much freeing. It's just let it go and not worrying.
Yeah. It'll be there when you get done, right? Like
Yeah. It'll always be there.
Come
Yeah.
back to it. And
Yes.
let's just touch a little bit before I ask my final question I asked all my guests, but let's talk a little bit about your book. You have a book called The Intuitive Goddess, speaking of intuition.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that. And
yeah. So that just released probably about a month ago, and it became an Amazon bestseller in sales and marketing and spiritual. So it's a co-author book. So it's myself with 15 other women who are sharing their stories of transformation, healing, and growth. So it's really an inspirational book. I dive deep into my story more than I shared here on this podcast. Pretty open, vulnerable, and authentic about the battles that I faced, and then into, what led me into my affair. And then the glory of that, of finding your true self, and then how my husband and I, we never got divorced. We may be separated for a couple of months, but we worked through it. And so I really talk about how our battles really can be our breakthrough if you really get intentional and get curious about the things that are happening. So, and the other women that are in the story, they share their stories of stepping into their calling, stepping into their purpose. So yeah, it's a great book. It is, I can share the link or send it to you on my website for anybody that might be interested.
Absolutely. Yeah. We'll be sure to put it in the show notes so everyone can grab a copy, because coming off this episode, I'm sure they're going to just want a little more inspiration. And, a lot of times we can see ourselves in other stories, and that's just the catalyst we need for change, to see that another woman who sounds exactly like us did it, so we can do it too. And
that's right.
And that helps us figure out our why, because as you were saying before, like, what's your why? Like, when times get tough and things get hard and it feels like the climb is just straight upwards and not at an incline.
Yeah.
You're going to have to tap back into, like, why do I even want this? Like, why am I doing this? And just keep that future thinking. And I know we talk about present, but and I'm not against goals. Like, that's the thing. I'm against, I'm not, for, but just don't get so future focused that you're not like in the here and now. Like, it's great to have goals. It's great to think of the future and to know why you want to get there. And, and I think, again, just getting really aware of why you're doing it is really going to be helpful. So, So last question. And again, I had a few more, but I knew like our conversation was just going to flow. So I'm just like, and I think we kind of covered the points of really where I wanted us to go today, as far as like helping my audience and a lot of women that feel stuck.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's just hearing us talk about it and that validation that they deserve this, and they, they deserve to take up space and own their true selves, and that they can say no, and all of the things that we talked about. So, and maybe, the audience, they have to go back and listen to this again and again and again, because you always hear something different the next time around. So, but my community always loves to hear from my experts. Like, you are where you are now, you've had quite the journey, but what is one thing that now that you wish you knew 5, 10, 15 years ago?
Yes. So I would say you can't serve from an empty cup. So for all the people pleasers, the contributors, the people that love to help others, mind that you can't serve from an empty cup. So you have to fill your cup up first, and then you can serve from your overflow, but it starts with you first. And so many women, we look at self-care as maybe selfish. And I say self-care is not selfish. It's badass. Like, give yourself the care that you need, because you'll be so much more abundantly able to give more when you are in the right state of mind.
I love that. And just, try that on a little bit. And if you're listening to this, like, try just one day of doing something for yourself and feel how good it feels, and feel how much more you can give others because you gave to yourself. That's so powerful. So where can my audience connect with you? Where do you like to hang out? Where can they find you? All the things. And how do you work with clients?
Yeah. So the best way they can find me is just jilloboyle.com. Jill, OBOYLE.com is probably the best. And then I'm usually on Instagram. So Instagram handle is JE O'Boyle. And then as far as serving my clients, before I talk about serving, I also have a podcast as well. So Your Life, Your Story, Rise Up. That's a great way to just kind of get more of the things I talk about, similar to your podcast, really talk about communication, productivity, purpose. I bring women on to tell stories of inspiration, stories of struggles, like everything in between, because I really think there's power in hearing somebody's story. That's why I created it as a safe space to help others to just really get the message out and share that maybe you can be on the other side of the world and hear somebody's story and be like, wow, I can totally relate to her. So those are the ways. And then as far as my coaching service, as you said earlier at the beginning, I'm a high performance coach. So my specialization is in that communication, productivity, purpose. I really help women who are just feeling stuck. They're burnt out. They might be just disconnected. They're working crazy long hours and they just need a reset. So I help them find that balance and realign that passion, that purpose, and really give them the freedom that they're looking for.
I love that. I love that. So one-on-one or group or both?
Both. So right now it's been one-on-one, but here coming up late spring, I'm rolling out my group coaching program as well. So look for that. That'll be an awesome way to get together I love bringing women together in a group setting. But it's a group setting, but you get one-on-one small coaching as well. So it's a nice balance to be connected with women who are also maybe, on the other side of the world, but similar situations. And then they have their own Facebook community where they can connect and grow together, become friends. It's a great experience.
I love that. And everyone's different. Like some people would love the one-on-one experience. Some people don't like the spotlight on them and they want to be in a community with other like-minded women doing the same thing. And some like a little of both. So I'm glad you're venturing into the group coaching world, because I think there's a place for that as well, especially with your services. I think
absolutely.
I think again, even myself, the one-on-one coaching can only go so far. Like we want to impact millions, and we can only do so much.
I know.
And trading time for
it's a lot. Yeah.
We don't want to burn out ourselves.
No,
so we have to, the more we can do for more women, the better. So I thank you for that. And thank you so much for being on. I think this was really a nice shift for the podcast to hear a little bit, shift away from talking about nutrition like we always do and sleep and water and all the things, to talk about, just really deep-seated, deep-rooted things that truly can change your life, and not only, make you more productive and confident and all the things, but like get you on the road to better health. So
absolutely.
I thank you for being here today.
Oh, thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode of The Real Heal and that you learned something new. And before you go, can you do me a quick favor? Take a screenshot right now and share it to Instagram and tag me so I can celebrate you for taking action and improving your health. And if you're enjoying this podcast, please take a minute to leave me a rating and a quick review. This will help others just like you find the show. And do not forget to subscribe, because you will not want to miss out on any of the amazing guest experts that I have coming up very soon. And remember, it's not selfish to take care of yourself. Do one thing today that makes you happy and learn to love life again. And with that, I'm out of here. Talk to you again soon.